Well, good afternoon, friends. Bill here with Sportsman Outreach. Hope you're having a good week. We're having a good one here and got a great friend here to talk today about the Kentucky Derby Outreach. I'm going to bring Bobby on and we'll get into it. It's one of our favorite events over the years. Hang on one second. Let me. There we go. Bobby, how you doing?
Hey, brother, doing well, thanks.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
What do you think about that banner? Does that look pretty good? That work out pretty good?
Looks good.
You see that? All right, man. That's cool. That's cool. Well, glad to have you on and chat about the Derby. When was the first time that we went to the Derby together? Do you remember what year?
Wow. I think that it was. I think it was 2010.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did we
Yes.
stay at the camp, like you and me and Scott? Is that what it was? Remember that?
No, like you. So we did stay at the camp for a number of years that I came, but Scott retired from the Derby the year before I started going.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
That figures. Did you
Yeah.
stay the first year? Did we stay at the house at the camp? Where did we stay? Remember that?
The first year I stayed was like in the little it was like in the little I don't know, like a shack kind of thing that was like close to the outhouses and all that.
Oh, yeah. Was it just us, or who else was with us? Like 4 or 5 of us?
Uh, yeah, I think there was about 4 or 5 of us that first year.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Those were good times. I like those camps and staying there. Yeah, we had to go down to the shower building down the hill.
yeah. Little walk through the woods
Walk through the woods
and all that.
and those are fun times. And
Yeah, yeah, for
I
sure.
forgot about all that. It was interesting. One year, it was, I guess, the year before. I'm sure you heard the story since we talk so much, tell all our stories. But so I think it was Scott and me and Joe Hale. Remember Joe from Atlanta?
Oh
Joe,
yeah, Joe and Hamilton.
Joe and Hamilton, and I think Jason Slade was with us. I think that's what it was. I can't remember. Anyway, we stayed up there in those camps, and it started raining. It was a day that it was raining, and it started raining. So here's what it was: it was raining all night. We got in our car, the Suburban, and I wanted to go look at another part of the camp, and so this was Sunday morning. So it was just 100 yards down the road in that muddy area, and I drove down there. We got stuck. And so we had to have somebody come pull us out. I cannot remember how that happened. And then we headed back down to Atlanta, and we were coming into the north part of Nashville. You're coming into from Louisville, and before you hit the loop. Have you heard this before?
Yeah, I think so. I think the monsoon, the year of the monsoon.
It rained so much, we came into that very north part, and it started to look really different. There was cars everywhere, and you could see the water in the road. And we came to the loop, and so I said, I used to live there, so I said, I know how to beat the system here. So I took a right on the loop. I was going to wind my way back through. So we went for like a mile or two on that loop, and we came to the cars. These cars were sitting there like they were in a NASCAR race, and I'm like, what's going on here? Because they were just sitting there. I don't think it was raining, but we got close to them, and no one was in the cars. I guess they just got out and left their cars, and then it proceeded to take us like an hour and a half or 2 hours to get through the city on the other side to come down to Atlanta. Man, it was a nightmare. Every shortcut I knew about, they were blocked off, so it was a mess. But anyway,
I know right where you're talking about. Yeah, we drove back from Nashville Sunday afternoon, so yeah, I can envision it right where you're talking about in my head.
On that loop, it was full of cars and the water was everywhere. So 2010. So what, like when you went the first time, of course, things have changed a lot, but what was your first thought about the Derby?
Yeah, I mean it's kind of like it's a pretty at that time it was a much more, I think, raucous crowd and stuff like that. But thankfully, like the Lord raising me up in Athens, Georgia. So, some of the guys come to the Derby, and that first experience, you get your hair blown back a little bit. But for me, I was kind of like, yeah, this is like an average Friday night before a home game in Athens or something, you know. So,
That's true. That's true.
uh, you know, I think if you, you know, the Derby though, it is unique. It's a, you know, I would just say it's a more electrified crowd. Um, much more so. The crowd, I think, engages quite a bit more than like maybe sometimes they do at the Super Bowl
That's a good
or something
point.
like that. You know, it's a bit more of a, you know, a lot of it's a hometown crowd and stuff like that. You know, they're Louisville people, and yeah, it's a pretty wild city, man. You know, Louisville's a maybe not really.
Right. Well, wait on Bobby. I'm doing so many stuff. The South, you said this is the thing from who else was? They look like the South does stuff like that. It's a different stuff. I love it. Pretty cool. If you watch it, stuff for singer that that computer sunlight finish. Check that out. What's that? All right, man. All right. All right. Bobby, you there? Testing one, two.
Can
There
you
you
hear
go.
me?
There you go. All right. Got you right there. All right.
All
Keep going.
right.
Keep going, man. Technology, brother. Remember, when they
It's
want to sell
great when it works.
they want to sell you an electric car, just remember. But go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, the Derby. Yeah, so it's been some amazing times over the years. You know, I remember the second year that I came. You know, I was just kind of thinking of, and I saw some old pictures recently. That was a year again. It was a small group of us, but you know, we had the joy of bringing Brother Alex Nunez,
Yeah.
who you know went to be with the Lord
Yeah.
last
Yeah.
fall, and I just remember, you know, he was such a tender-hearted and broken-hearted evangelist. You know, I just remember him weeping over the crowds, and Peter Salas and I were talking about when this is a different thing, but when we're in Dallas for the Super Bowl, and he was preaching in front of the JFK Museum. You know, we had a kind of a major event there with a bunch of Muslims and stuff like that. But I just remember all these people lined up in front of the Kennedy Museum, and Alex just preached his heart out, and then just kind of wept on my shoulder and talk about all the people perishing in their sin. And you know, he was kind of that way with the Derby too. You know, it is a just an absolute sea of lostness out there. You know, and you know, everyone's kind of you know, their conscience, you know, some more tender, some less. But I do think that's something, you know, for people that are coming to the Derby prepare for. I mean, it's just an absolute sea of lostness, and you know, all those people going to the infield, you know, which is where we kind of focus the preaching around. Most of them can't even see the race; they're just going to get, you know, hammered. Um, you know, but the Lord still works. You know, I mean, and how will they hear without a preacher? You know, the lost sheep haven't all been brought into the fold yet, so we got to go.
That's right. Well, that's very true. I think when they obviously, if you've been there when they're coming out, you know, it's definitely a man at his sort of civilized worst, drunk, out of control, slobbering. Wait, I mean, of course, it's rained so much. They come out of there, everybody going in looking all nice and neat. They come out, get rain, roll. They've been rolling in mud and staggering out. Man, it's just
Yeah, So some of those years, it really has been a sight. When it's been, like you said, people rolling in mud. I don't know if you saw this or remember this, but one year some of the porta johns had kind of overflowed, and along the curbs on 4th Street, they were right across from the infield, like the blue juice from the
Oh
porta johns was like lining the curbs, and there was all these women coming out, and they, of course, they went in there in like these platform shoes and high heel shoes, and so they're coming out barefoot, holding their shoes in their hand, and they're all trouncing through the blue porta john juice and stuff like that. Man, I mean, I thought, man, this city's gonna have like an E. coli outbreak or something, man. I mean, yeah, it's amazing to see, what do they call it? The fastest 60 seconds in sports or something like that. That just, people start coming out there. They're not quite as early as they used to be, but I mean, I remember when I first started going with you, man, we were out there at 6:45 or 6:30 in the morning. They're all waiting in line.
up to go in. Yeah, no, it's crazy. That's amazing. Sort of, specifically the track, Churchill Downs holds 150, 60,000 people. And if you've never been before, just a couple of facts about it. What the Derby weekend is really two things. One, it's another day at Churchill Downs track. And so they run races all day like normal. But they have two special races. One is called the Kentucky Oaks on Friday. Typically, it's about a 5 o'clock p.m. race. And then they do the same on Sunday when they run the Derby 5:45, right, Bobby? And so
Saturday. Yeah, you said Sunday.
Oaks is Friday, the Derby Saturday. And so what we do is get out there about 8 o'clock in the morning because the gates open at 8 and they're running races and people are coming in. And so you start preaching and you really run up till about 2 o'clock. Basically, everybody's in the track, or they were pre-COVID, and then take a little break. And then about 4 o'clock or so, they start trickling out. And then once the race is run, then the whole host of people, you're talking probably 90, 100,000 on Friday, a good 140, 150 on Saturday, start pouring out. And what took, 6 hours to go in, it takes about 3 to come out. It's just mayhem. And then they've been drinking all day, gambling, and they're still telling what else. So that's the Derby. 150,000, what's that, 250? And they basically all pass by where we have teams, right? When you say that?
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's some key locations there, and all 240, 250 basically come out by us. And so that makes the Derby. You can reach a lot of people. And then plus just the personal interactions, the combative nature of everybody when they come out and they've been drinking all day. And that's the way it goes, though. That's why we're there. So,
yeah.
What else would you add to that in terms of the layout of the track and what's going on? Anything else?
Well, I think you laid it out pretty good. Last year we did find an additional great spot that we never used before that was down closer to like the grandstand entrance, and that turned out to be a fantastic spot. But like you said, I don't really think that, if we have 3 teams or 4 teams out there, I don't really think that there's any place where people can get into the track that's uncovered by our teams. And so it's a great event for preaching. I mean, obviously the word is going out. If we got a good group of guys, the word is going out the entire time that we're out there. And tracks are, we give out a good number of tracks. Tracks are a little bit slower. I mean, I think, just in general, a lot of sporting events, tracks will be a little bit slower than, if you're at like a festival or, on a college campus or something like that. But people do still take tracks. And what's great about the tracks, too, is a lot of times people take it and say, what is it? And that can start you into a conversation right away. We were out at this Super Bowl in Phoenix, and Tommy Waltz, man, this was really neat. He had a track that just said God on the front. And so people take it, and he'd say, "What do you think about God? Are you right with God?
Yeah.
Who do you think God is?" And I mean, he was like, that got him into conversation, just like one after another after another.
Yeah.
So I thought that was great, and there's a lot for every evangelist at the Derby, because if you love to preach, there's lots of opportunities to preach. If you're a guy that likes doing one-on-one, there's plenty of opportunities for that. So I really think, I've talked about, for many years, sort of obviously SFOI is known for the Super Bowl event, which is an amazing event. Um, and NFL London, although that's the much smaller team, for me has become, really just probably the treasured event for me, especially being able to take Hannah with me last year and just everything she said about her interactions with the team. Yeah, and I do need to get you a testimony video about that. She consistently said her favorite times were just hearing the brothers giving the reports in the evening and how the Lord was working and hearing all the people pray. But the Derby, to me is always special to me. One, because man, I mean that's my only lament of the Derby is now somehow in your silliness or in your wisdom, you've gotten confident enough to let me run it, and you decided off to sunny Miami or something like that for the weekend. While we could be getting frozen or burned or drowning in rain in Louisville, I get it. But these rides you and I used to have from Atlanta were really a treasured time. But the Derby, the thing is, one of the things really neat is it's a little bit smaller team, than say something like a Super Bowl. So there's opportunity to kind of like the Super Bowl. You can just try to just the whole weekend. It's everything you could do to try to say hello to everybody. Like if there's 100 people there, but if you got 25 or 35 guys, then you get to spend a little bit more time. And the neat thing about Friday at the Derby is it's a slightly slower pace. So one of the things that the brothers that led teams last year, we thought would be a good idea is like on Friday we tried to put people on teams where they didn't really know any of the guys.
Good, yeah.
So they would have time to have a little bit more fellowship and everything like that. And then Saturday we kind of teamed guys up with guys they knew and they trusted and everything like that. Because I mean, Saturday you got to be ready. It's the floodgates are open. It's like some kind of thing from like some scene out of Lord of the Rings or something. When the hordes, come and attack. You remember some of those years? Remember that one year we had so much rain in the morning, and then like the people for the infield didn't start coming out till maybe like 1 or 2 in the afternoon. They were coming over that bridge. It was like The Walking Dead or something. They're literally coming over like because they've been drinking all day at home instead of inside the track. And they were all wasted by the time they even got there. So we got drilled with them coming in and going out that year. But yeah, just a great event and a great time with the brothers.
Yeah, that's so true. When we stayed up at Cedar Ridge, and we'll get to Pastor Matheny's church in a minute, the fellowship in the cabins, the riding back and forth. I mean, obviously that's something we want to have happen, and the Derby's is a good event for these things. And so we've had a lot of good times, having the meetings in that little house up there in the camp, when have people speak and stuff and pray together. And so it's, I enjoyed the being outside. It's, I like just not having distractions, and that just lends itself to it's a really good fellowship. So that's definitely happens. And then even on Friday, while there's 90,000 people that roll in, it never really seems like it's it's like it's overwhelming in the same way. So you have time to chat and get to know each other.
Yeah.
Saying. And then Saturday is definitely a blowout. Tell me too. Let's chat a minute about interacting with the authorities, just in general. We've been given a lot of liberty there from the police and so forth. And I mean, I don't know how they could ever, in the early days, how they could ever say anything to us, because it was certainly it was definitely a free for all when you were there and before that. But now they've kind of gotten a little more sophisticated. They put of course, if you've never been there, it's hard to imagine what we're talking about. But across the street from the track sits on a place called 4th and Central, if you look on the map. The track is Churchill Downs. And at that intersection now at 4th and Central, they have put up a queue. That's for tickets, isn't it? Or is that for cabs? But they've created some organizational things in there, taking away a lot of the spontaneous stuff. That's changed the dynamics a little bit, but nevertheless, the police have been very helpful to us, at least pre-COVID. What's your thought about that? Do you agree? And give us some feedback on interacting with them.
Yeah, in general, interaction with the police has been pretty good. Like you said, man, in the early days, there were so many, like, every Pelagian that you've ever heard of, and every, abuser was out there. So, they were actually like, these guys are nice. So, yeah, since COVID, things have changed a lot. They've used a lot of, temporary fencing and stuff like that, I think, to try to, I would say maybe just, sort of slow the crowd down a little bit, like,
That's a good way to say
part of it, I think that I think one of the things they've done is blocked off, Central Avenue completely, except for a
right.
couple of choke points where they allow them to cross the street. But I think it's actually probably kept the crowd a lot safer, because I think there was a couple of people that were hit by cars
Oh,
on
really?
Central,
Really?
over the years, and stuff like that. Now last year they did kind of, the police, the first day we were in, there's kind of 3 or 4 normal places where we have teams. And last year, the first day, they challenged us to leave one of the spots where we've been at historically. And I kind of felt like the Lord was, wanting us to kind of stand our ground that day, and we did, and we got away with it. The next day they came and they told us they wanted us to move from that spot, and they were a little more forceful. And so we decided, well, not probably worth, getting the hooks for, and just moved to a different spot. I know that,
That's what opened
Brother
up the
Nate.
other location, though. That's what opened up the other location, right?
Yeah. Well, no, the other location was one that we kind of had. We did have that one on Friday too. We had just never tried that one before.
Well, that's true.
But I think what had happened was we saw it like the year before last, and we thought, well, maybe we could try a team down there next year. And so we did right out of the gate last year, and that worked out really well. So yeah, I mean, generally, Louisville PD's been pretty, reasonable with us, and good with us.
Who was the guy that one year he was out in the middle of the street before they changed everything? He was out there preaching, and he created such a riot that they called the police on him. Who was that? Remember that?
Oh, you talking about when they had the SWAT and all that come over?
Yeah, the guy was over there by the bank before they tore the bank down.
Yeah, that's a guy that I don't know if he does anything anymore. Some guy calls himself James the Preacher.
Is that what it was?
The guys that really like to get people fired up, they're all brother somebody or somebody the preacher.
Right.
Like there's no just like that's Bill Adams. It's like Bill the Preacher, or brother Bill, like with the suspenders and the bowler hat or something.
Well, that just shows how hard you have to push to really get them to act. They never said anything to us back then. So,
yeah, I mean they always were good to us, and those guys. I mean, they were just nothing but something we've been talking about for years. Like if you're just out calling people names, like I mean a broken clock's right twice a day.
Right.
So like I'm not saying those guys don't ever say anything that's truthful, but if you're just out calling people whore, this, that, the other, that's not really preaching,
right.
And I really wish people would stop calling that preaching. I mean, that's what I've called it in the past is those are open air abusers, more than they are preachers. And I mean, if you want to go out there and get people fired up, I mean, you certainly can do that. I mean, I don't, if you're just, calling, you got a bunch of guys with women on their arm and you're calling their lady, foul names and stuff like that. I mean, even a pagan is going to try to defend the honor of his woman, I mean, So
Yeah, it was crazy, man. Well, cool. So let's talk about the other thing before we get to the church is really right there on that one corner. Of course, Scott Smith to laugh about this is the Starbucks. In other words, there's definitely retail places, a grocery store, the Mexican restaurant right there, the Subway across the street. It's a pretty preacher friendly place, wouldn't you say, in terms of things like that?
yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's a Starbucks right there. There's a Kroger right next to it. Um, yeah, I mean there's plenty of places like, if you needed stuff to get it.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, you're out there all day, 8 to 8 basically. So that does help the cause quite a bit. Helps the cause. Let's talk about the
Yeah.
church, Pastor Paul Matheny. How did we find him to start with? Remember that? How did he find us?
That's a good question, brother. I thought you found Pastor Paul.
I was thinking. I think.
Oh, it was Clay Hall.
Oh,
Clay Hall is the one that yeah, Clay Hall I guess used to be on the pastoral staff
right.
there. And yeah, I think he introduced you to Pastor Paul. And boy, man, the rest is history in
Yeah.
such an amazing providence and kindness of God to us. Because yeah, Beachmont Baptist Church, is like 2 miles from the track, and Pastor Paul, just a evangelistic hearted pastor, and just wanting to have us there, and been so gracious to pray for us and encourage us and provide things whatever we need. They had a brother, I think his name was John, that was from the maintenance staff of the church last year, that was running extension cords around for us in there and everything. And yeah, can't say enough about the folks at Beachmont Baptist Church and Pastor Paul. Just a great bunch of folks, and glad they are. Um, that the way Pastor Paul talks to you is almost like we're doing him a favor. It's like he's doing us a major, massive favor. So
Yeah, and the logistics of the Derby, Churchill Downs, again, if you've never been there, sits actually in the middle of a neighborhood, a residential neighborhood. And I'm sure at one point it was a thriving, kind of typical 50s, 60s neighborhood around there. Anyway, so that's where it sits. And so and then the camp we used to stay out, Camp Cedar Ridge, was about a 30-minute drive. And so a couple years ago, Clay Hall was on the staff there at Beachmont Baptist, introduced us to Pastor Mathenia at Beachmont Baptist. Is 1.9 miles from the track. So, and they have a van. And so Bobby's able to drive everyone from the church to the track and back. You can't imagine how helpful that is to not only to stay there, but to be able to be that close to the church and ride back and forth well, both nights really, but on Saturday, it's such chaos. I think one year we had a bus was coming to get us. We did several things going back and forth to Cedar Ridge Camp. Typically, we're driving separate cars. And I think 2 years we got a bus of some sort. Well, the bus one Saturday, he could not get down to where we're at Churchill Downs. And what, it'd take us another hour and a half to find him.
yeah,
And it was a mess. So, but in essence, you can drive the van down close to the Churchill Downs and catch a ride back. That's really huge and saving a lot of time. So we're shipping some cots. Everybody stays in that part of the church. The meals are there. It's 1.9 miles. The shower trailer's there. So it's a really concise situation there at the church. It's really, I wish all of our events had a church, had the same kind of setup. It would make it all quite a bit more simple. So yeah, that's what
yeah, yeah. It's very it's a huge help. Not even just uh, how close, like how we're able to drop the teams off very close to locations. I mean, especially, like if you got if you got a bunch of gear, like a big bag, and it's full of water bottles, full of tracks, and you got 20, 30 pounds on your back. If you got to walk a couple miles and you're an old fat guy like me, like that, it not only everything you already said, but that also saves a lot of energy.
yeah, sure does.
Um,
Oh, yeah.
for what are, a couple of really long days. So yeah,
At least when
yeah.
you walk out a limited amount of time on the sidewalk. Do your legs start hurting after a while? I mean, it really, you try to have to manage that. You just can't walk around, without a price. So having a short distance to walk to the van is very, very helpful. So it's a
Yeah.
great setup. So the church is a great setup. Churchill Downs is a good setup, and Bobby's a great team leader. And I think really everybody enjoys, like the Super Bowl, enjoys being there. It seems to have its own sense of fellowship. Just guys are willing to go for the fellowship. Do you think that's true too?
Yeah, I mean the fellowship's great. Um, especially that Friday where the pace is, not a slow pace, but definitely slower than Saturday. Where you can really kind of spend some time talking to guys on your team, and that's what I hope to try and do again this year. If we have a bunch of guys that have never met, put them together on Friday, let them have that day where it's like, you really sometimes, like on a day like Saturday, man, you don't get to spend a lot of time like fellowshipping out there because it's just so busy. But on Friday, you could actually feel like, you know, there might be two or three guys you didn't know that you actually got to know them, you know, and we're able to still give out tracks, still engage people, stuff like that. But, actually have some quality time speaking to another brother, which, some of these other environments, it's just go, 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 like, and you don't really get that. Like I said, 25 or 35 folks is quite a big difference when it comes to, just how much fellowship you can have with an individual person, versus like 100 at the Super Bowl. At the Super Bowl, I would say you get that with like your team,
Yeah.
but that's it. With like people that aren't on your team, you might only just kind of get to say hello and good to see you again, or how you been or something like that. But having that little bit less people, there's definitely more time to fellowship.
Well, a couple more things. We'll wrap it up here. I was thinking as you were talking, what makes the Derby, thinking of particular scenarios we typically don't see, at least in the sports world. And I would say fans coming out. So in other words, like if you were looking for not a new experience, like your kind of bucket list, but another place to challenge your preaching, what would make the Derby different? What would be different? I would say one specific item is when they're coming out on Saturday and they're all flowing out, and you're standing there not while a couple hundred roll by, but thousands for several hours coming by. They've been drinking, and they certainly will say what they think. That is certainly a test to the preacher to stay on point and not get in the flesh. Would you say that is one preaching experience you have at the Derby that you don't always experience other places?
Yeah, absolutely, brother. Generally, it's been my desire to try to put like the most the most self-controlled and experienced preachers up there at that time, because like you said, man, it's just tens of thousands of people coming out for like an hour and a half or something like that, and so you usually try to, like, the hour beforehand, pick out like three guys or four guys that are going to preach. And I think so there's a lot at play there. Is one, it really helps you as a preacher, and two, if there's somebody who's young, who's more like a really getting started, or to be able to see older guys that have done that, like I'm thinking like a Ken Heisel or a Joe Toy or a Mark Yoho, to see those guys be able to preach their message and not let the world get them off their message.
Right.
Is a really, I think that's a unique experience that you really only get at the Derby, because like, we go to Super Bowl, or you go to, to whatever these other, college football game or something like that, we're leaving at kickoff.
Right.
Like this is the one where you see the people, I mean, one, it's heartbreaking because it's humanity at its worst. I would say, but two, just having that experience and not just seeing those, really seasoned preachers. A lot of time too, we get a guy that's a little bit newer, but he's been at it a little bit, and you put him up there so to let him grow. And then the other guys, I mean, like for that hour, 2 hours or whatever, man, you can barely blink. Like it's basically, if you think about like, maybe like, the Spartans were constantly like, on the attack and stuff like that. But think about it, like the Spartans were on defense. That's a little bit like what that hour and a half is like, because basically you just have to form a fortress, like a shield around the preacher. And you just don't know what's going to happen, man. You don't know if somebody's going to try to dive through and there and get them. You don't know if a water bottle or something else is going to come flying. That's what I always tell guys, because if you haven't seen it before, you don't know what to expect. But I try to tell them, listen, during that time, I mean, you literally look. We all need to be situationally aware all the time. A lot of people. I'll just say this, just in general in the world, end up being victims of crimes and being robbed or worse because they're like staring at a cell phone, not paying attention to what's going on around them. But even more so when it's your brother preaching. I've just always had a conviction, brother. I don't want somebody to get a free shot on my brother if I could have done something to stop it. So that's a unique environment where you really get to be part of a team that like, it's almost like an angry mob coming out of there, and not in a bad way. I actually feel like, man, some of the closest, just sweetest times are like that. Like when you get on the bus right after that part's over, and you just really feel like this brotherhood and this camaraderie. Like, man, we just were like in like spiritual war together. And anytime you go out and share the gospel in the public streets, you're going to have that. Paul, Philippians 1, he said, it's been counted to you not only to believe in him, but also suffer for his sake. And a lot of people stop there, but he says, engaged in the same conflict you heard that I had and now hear that I still have. What is that conflict? That's the public ministry of the gospel of Jesus Christ. It brings conflict, but that last part of the Derby is in such a heightened way that you just get out of there knowing, man, we were in battle together and the Lord sustained us, and we all looked out for each other, and that's, to me, these one another's, count others more highly than you count yourself. Like, how do you do that? Well, you do that by, man, watching the guy's back who's preaching, and stuff like that. So yeah, it's a really sweet time.
Especially when you guys were around that pole in the center of Fourth all those years.
Yeah.
You were always there. And those great pictures, y'all being by that telephone pole and people surrounding you and saying, "Oh, it was crazy. It was really crazy."
Yeah. Yeah. And we get that, sort of the shield wall going. Yeah. And that reminds me, I got to call Brother Adam Cutshaw up to see if he's coming this year, because he's a good guy to have in the front of that.
True.
And Mark Yoho is a giant, and he's not gonna be able to make it this year, man. So I don't know. We got to figure out who's gonna be the shield this year, but the Lord knows.
That's good. I think another thing that happens at the Derby, I mean, it happens in most things we try to do, but just the long day. The long day is necessary. You're out there 12 hours trying to capture people coming and going. Here's a good story from that. I don't know if you were there or not, but on that one corner at 4th and Central, we get there early at 8 o'clock and start preaching. One reason we get there early is to get a good spot, but the other is just to be a witness all day. And so whoever's running the team, the fans started accusing the preacher of saying something the preachers weren't saying. And so somebody said, "Why don't you ask the police who was working the gate there at the road?" And they said, "I've been listening all day long, and that's not what they were saying at all." And so being there early, being a constant witness, preaching Christ, being, all the things that Paul tells Timothy, really bears witness in ways. It always does, but at the Derby too, bears witness in ways we don't anticipate. Precisely because they close off the roads early. We're out there first thing. We see the guy that works at Wagner's and all the police first thing, and and so man,
Yeah.
we're there. So
Yeah.
I think that's a great lesson to learn if you've never really thought of those things before. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I mean, one of the things we always pray in prayer calls is that we would be a blessing to the authorities and people like that. And we've had a number of encounters at the Derby over the years where the authorities expressed that our teams with SFOI were being a blessing and were easy to distinguish from some of the other sort of more abusive type folks out there. So I think that's a great witness for the Lord.
Yeah.
So yeah, and like you said, some of these authorities too. I know they at least get some regional authorities at the Derby, but like when you're doing that at the Super Bowl and there's authorities from all over the world, you've had it where they testified like, man, your people were here and they were upright, they were kind, they weren't abusive, and that's what I think, we're going to these events, and so like you've got a attorney that's sending a letter to the Louisville Police Department and chief police and whoever's going to be in charge of the Derby, and then they can see SFOI and they go, oh, those are kind of the good guys, as far as however they might feel or not feel about the message individually is not what I'm getting into. Is that they can just see what we are doing out there is not inciting people and going to make their whole weekend or whatever couple days harder than it would have been.
That's a good point. That's a good point. All right, anything else to share before we wrap it up? Anything, other thoughts you have? And tell me, how would you like people to contact you if they have an interest in coming to the Derby?
Any other thoughts? I want you to come to the Derby, whoever's out there listening. They can contact me, email BobbyMcCreery@gmail.com or my phone number, 404-985-3765. They have other questions or anything like that, they can contact me. I think maybe you don't have to say this, but I do have a fairly busy schedule. So if you call and I don't answer or something like that, don't take offense. Just leave a message or text me and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. But happy to answer any questions or, engage with, any prayer needs that somebody might have that could be an obstacle for them coming or anything like that. But I would just highly commend this event to you. And it's going to be another great year, I believe.
All right, man. Bobby, well, great to be with you as always.
You too, brother.
Anything else to share at all you want to talk about?
Well, now you just got to find somebody else to run us, whatever you're doing down there in Miami. So you can be with us at the Derby again.
Since you left, you left your people down there. I'm trying to go down there and bring some light down there. So,
yeah, I did leave. The people from my old life are all still down there doing what I was doing. That's for sure.
I wear a T-shirt that says "I know Bobby McCreery to you," and see if I get any responses. So.
That's so funny that you mentioned that, because I actually just got a private message from a pastor who I don't think I've ever met personally, but he's in Georgia, and he sent me a message today and said, "Hey, I actually work with your brother-in-law."
You gotta be kidding! Really?
Yeah. Here's a really quick small world.
Yeah,
we say that, right? Hey, small world. Yeah. And a few years ago, a friend of mine named Chad Israel, great brother, I said, "Small world." We were talking about something like that, and he said, "Yeah, but big God." And so I never say small world without saying big God anymore. So this guy messaged me. He works at the same company my brother-in-law works at. And I said, "Yeah, please pray for him." And he said, "Okay, I will." And he said, "Yeah, he was talking to our branch coordinator, and he said, I don't know, somebody was talking to him about the Lord or something." And my brother-in-law said, "Oh yeah, my brother-in-law is a street preacher." You don't know him. You don't know him though. And they said, really, what's his name? And they said it. And then one guy said, I know who that is.
No way.
So yeah, it is a small world. Sunday I was preaching our church plant in Hendersonville, Tennessee, right outside of Nashville. There's a new couple that's been attending there. And so I meet this brother. His name's Joe and his wife Julie. And I said, well, how'd you get here? He said, well, we moved here from California. I said, where'd you live in California? He said, Southern California. He said, I was an elder at a church called First Baptist Lomita.
No
Now,
way.
you know what that is, Bill?
That's Rick's church.
That's where Rick Garland's the pastor now.
No way, really.
And so this brother knew Rick, and he knew Max Graves because those churches work together a lot. He knows Paul Abbott, who we know well and love. And it's so funny because this guy, he's at like our church plant's meeting at a house right now. There's like 20 or 30 people.
That's amazing.
And he just showed up there like 3 weeks ago.
That's amazing.
And he's like, huh?
How did he find the church?
I think probably through G3 or something like that. But yeah, he said First Baptist Lomita. I said, why does that sound familiar? And then I said, who's the pastor? He said, it was a guy named Jim Miller. He said, now it's Rick Garland. I said, oh man, like I know Rick and Amy, but yeah, it shows. I mean, in one way it's kind of neat. In another way, it shows you it's a little bit sad how small the evangelism, world actually is. So that's maybe the last thing I can say to people is, we have this command from the Lord, pray to the Lord of the harvest that he would send more laborers to the harvest. So pray that and pray that he might send you to the Kentucky Derby, May 4th through the 6th or 7th, excuse me.
Amen. All right, Bobby, good to be with you. Thanks for taking your time to chat.
Appreciate you, brother.
All right.
All right. God bless you. Bye.
But you guys, y'all heard Bobby. Send him a message, email or text him, and sign up for the Derby. It's only, a couple of months away, so get sign up early and let's get rolling, get a good team, and bring the light and life of the gospel to the Derby fans one more year, Lord willing. Thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye.